All right. Okay, here we go. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm here to welcome you to a special presentation brought to you by A&I Financial Services. Today, we're talking about women in financial resiliency. My name is Stacey Frank. I'm the Vice President and one of the owners here of A&I Financial Services. And Marla Mason is joining me today. She's a CFP professional, and she's a professor who teaches other financial planners how to do this financial planning work. So welcome today, and we're very excited to share our insights with you. All right. Well, this may look familiar for many of us as we emerge from the hibernation of the pandemic over the last year plus, and we're all contorting ourselves in so many ways to be balanced in spite of all the things that are changing in our lives. We've got so much to juggle with remote school, remote work, transitioning back to school, transitioning back to work, and sort of keeping everything going. And I chose these pictures because they spoke to me, brought a smile to my face. And a couple that I left off were those of infinity laundry and infinity dishes, which I think all strike a chord with many of us listening to this presentation today. So why are we here? Today we want to look together at what we learned from 2020. What did 2020 show us about the need for women to be financially resilient and really take care of this element in our lives? And we want to start with sharing some good news for women investors, and then we'll take a step back and think about ways that we can work with our belief systems around our finances to help make sure that we put ourselves in the very best position for being financially successful. And from there, Marla and I will talk about how to manage your money like a boss, and we'll provide our top 5 tips for building financial resiliency. Does that sound good? You can relax. It'll be a short and hopefully fun presentation for all of you, and Marla will kick us off.
So, yes, let's talk about 2020. That was certainly a different year than ever before. And for those of you that like roller coasters and like to go to amusement parks with roller coasters, may have found 2020 great, because there were certainly the huge ups, the huge downs, and twists and turns, and never knowing exactly where we were going next. But when we look at this, look at the things like the pandemic, job losses, and women lost, a net of 5.4 million jobs, nearly 1 million more than men did. When we look at the industries like travel and leisure and hospitality, and those industries suffered some of the greatest job losses, and nearly 2 in 5 jobs lost came from that industry, and they will be the last ones that get going when we restart and the vaccine's fully in place. And 53% of the employees in that industry were women going into the pandemic. And another industry is education, and in education suffered tremendous job losses and forced people to work from home. And that's an industry where 77% of the employees in education are women. 2 out of 3 caregivers had to deal with the pandemic and suffered a special strain because they were caregiving. And typically, as a caregiver, you're taking care of somebody that has comorbidities, that has health issues, or has other kinds of constraints that make them more vulnerable during the pandemic. And homeschooling. We started doing more and more homeschooling, either by choice or being forced into it. And 67% of families ended up with women being the one that took over the homeschooling responsibilities. And so that put a tremendous, additional effort and strain on women. But there's good news. There's definitely good news. And some of the good news is that when we look at things like, more of us are buying homes. And a good example of this is, so the National Association of Realtors report on first-time home buyers showed that 18% of new home buyers or first-time home buyers are women, as opposed to only 8% of single men. And so you see women making, which would make sense. We tend to be make nests, and we like making nests and having that kind of stability. In addition, more women are earning advanced degrees and even bachelor's degrees, and significantly up from 40, 50 years ago, that most, or at least the majority of women, are actually receiving degrees, and which is huge in terms of our ability to, because that helps us be resilient going forward. And companies are benefiting more and more from the leadership of women, and both as executive leaders and also as owners. And for instance, it may sound like a small number, but 37 of the Fortune 500 companies today are companies have women as CEOs. And that's significant. That there was a period in our history for quite some time that there were no women CEOs in that Fortune 500. And the fact that there's 37 now is huge. And women run companies receive more venture capital than ever before. Retirement accounts, we're better savers typically than men. Women contribute almost 12.5% of their paychecks to retirement accounts, whereas men are down around the 11.6%, according to the Pew Research Center. And our investments, when we invest our money, our investments perform better. A joint study by the University of California, Berkeley, and University of California, Davis, looked at the difference between men and women in their investments, and the study showed that women's investments outperform men's by 1%. And that's a significant difference, especially when you look at compounding that difference over several years when you're heading toward retirement. So we're doing a lot of things right. Women will control an additional $20 trillion in the next 10 years simply because we outlive men. And as a result, and often in married situations, the husbands are older than the wife. And as a result, since they die earlier, women have control of those finances for a longer period of time. And one of the statistics that I saw that was really kind of interesting, and it's one of those feel-good statistics, and that is that of the women over 60, which I'm one of them, the women over 60 that are still in the workplace, that most of them are there because they want to be, not because they have to be. And so it's not that they can't afford to stop working. It's because they enjoy what they're doing. And I think that's a real positive statement about our country and our society. And so, Stacey, when you look at how we manage our money and how we view the world and ourselves, and especially money matters, can you talk a little bit about the lenses that we look through and how we end up seeing things as a result of those lenses?
Yeah, absolutely, Marla. I would love to talk about that. And I just want to go back and sort of underscore a couple of the statistics that I heard from you, because I think I'm hearing you correctly. Women are actually better investors than men. statistically, we may not invest as much because we tend to save more, but when we actually invest, we outperform. And one of the reasons that I've read for that is that as women, we don't tend to tinker, and that tinkering actually hinders performance in our male counterparts. So I feel like that's a really that's a good reason to be confident and to proceed with confidence as we look at encouraging each other and ourselves to become more confident investors, because we really are good at this. And I think you make a great point, Marla, too, about how women, because of our longevity, we tend to be, in many cases, double inheritors. We'll tend to both inherit assets from our parents and possibly assets from our spouse. So there's a really good possibility that we will be handling finances for our family, and that we'll actually be in charge of quite a nest egg. Many of us will do that. And as we continue to live longer and we pursue our careers longer, we have longer lifetime earnings. So a lot of these things really compound to ease some of the things that are making it difficult in some ways to be financially resilient. So let's step back a little bit and talk about how our financial mindset, just our beliefs around money, can either help us in terms of our investment behavior, or it can get in our own way. And I think it's really important that we, step out of the pandemic thinking, okay, now we really know why it's important to understand our financial situation and put ourselves in the very best position for success. Because if it's not the pandemic, then it could be something else. A spouse could die, a loved one could die, we could lose a job. There could be another reason that makes us financially vulnerable. So it's super important that we take sort of this prompt of the pandemic and start to look at how we frame our relationships with money, because some of those beliefs that are at the table can be really helpful and can contribute to our success, and some we may want to weed out along the way to help us position ourselves for more financial success. So let's go ahead and get started. I love this because it can be scary to talk about money, but really, what's our alternative? And I'm here to assure you that just talking about something won't actually bring it into existence. So it's okay. We can say, gosh, what would happen if my spouse died? What would happen if I lost my job? Those things will help us get real and take real significant next steps to bolster our financial resiliency, and they won't actually make it more likely to occur. So it's okay to talk about money, and it's a tough topic to talk about sometimes. And Marla and I are here to sort of support you in this journey of starting these difficult conversations, because the more we talk about money, actually the easier it becomes. So this might actually be the hardest part, is that very first step. So I love this framework that has really been instrumental in the way I think about money. And it was given to me by one of my mentors. His name is Courtney Pullen, and he wrote a book called Empowered Wealth, which I encourage you all to take a look at. And this is something that I think really helps us as women look at, what potential beliefs we have around money. Do we hang out in sort of the left side of the continuum where we're worried? Maybe we feel a little bit shameful, like, gosh, I should already know this stuff, or I don't want to think about it at all, or I don't know, if I worry about it, something bad might happen. Or are we on the other side where we feel a little bit entitled to it, like, well, I don't need to know about this stuff. Everything will take care of itself. Or I was really hard today, and I'm just going to buy that new pair of shoes off the internet and hope they fit. Or that vacation sounds so good, I'm going to roll the dice and hope that I can travel. Those travel restrictions lift, and I'm going to go ahead and buy that thing that I think will make me feel fulfilled. And what I want to posit for everyone is that there is a way to perhaps strike a balance where we're using our money to support life purpose, and that we find a place of sort of responsibility with money where we're not so focused on money that it's we're equating it with our self-worth. And we're also not pretending that money doesn't matter, because a lot of our goals will have a financial component. And at the end of the day, our quality of life is impacted by how we use our financial resources and how those resources support us. So I encourage you listening, sort of think about, the money narratives that are in your head. What do you tend to think about? And where do you fall on this continuum? And we may not be sort of in one place. We may move even throughout the day or throughout the different seasons in our life. We may be in a different place. But this framework, I think, helps create some awareness around that, so that we can then sort of take some next steps in terms of, what feels healthy. Let's do more of that. And if something is getting in our way, let's start to unclog that from our lives. And sometimes even making a couple little changes will be huge. So, for example, if you think of a river sort of getting stuck because there's sort of debris, stuck in the middle. Well, you don't have to take out maybe every stick in the river to help make it flow a little bit better. Maybe you just need to move one or two, and all of a sudden things will be more smooth. So I encourage you just to find one or two behaviors that you want to do less of, and think of ways that you can encourage yourself and create habits around the things that you want to do more of. And with that, sort of, feeling a positivity around the things that we can do to maintain, a healthy balance. It's really important because, we've got to, take the bull by the horns here. 80% of us, 80% of American women will be solely responsible for our personal financial situation at some point in our life. So we're not really thinking about this as a small probability. There's a really big chance that we'll be responsible for our finances. And let's gather the tools now that we need in order to create sort of the best possible outcome for our future self. All right. And I know it's hard, and this might look familiar to some of us. I know I have one of these. It's the junk drawer.
Two.
Marla has two. I have one in my office, and I have one at home.
Well,
my security junk drawers. Yeah. And the thing about junk drawers is that, that this contains some useful stuff, right? It contains things that I think I will need someday and that I have needed, and that's why I've saved it. But the thing about junk drawers and the thing about some of our, situations is that sometimes just by seeing what's in there, not being afraid to look, going to that one drawer where, we know, it's not that we don't know what we need to do. It's just that we need encouragement to take that first step. So we open up that drawer that contains all this useful thing, and we start, putting it in containers. We start to sort through what's useful and what's not useful. And we can create an organized space that helps support our next steps. So from there, Marla's going to give us some real life first steps to sort of open that drawer of our financial situation and start to take charge.
So one of the things that it can be very important and very insightful to individuals is to create a personal balance sheet. Every company has a balance sheet where they put their assets on one side and their liabilities on the other side, and to find out what their net worth is out of that. And but a well-constructed personal balance sheet coupled with a cash flow statement can tell you an infinite number of things, and it can give you a sense of what you own, of how well you're prepared for emergency. When life happens and things that are unexpected, how prepared are you? And the figures on that balance sheet, interestingly enough, can tell you that. And it can tell you how you're allocated to things, in terms of your investments, ratios of bonds and stocks, et cetera. And help you understand your rationale for how things ended up there, which may be because it kind of ended up like the junk drawer and things just kind of gotten thrown in there, but by organizing them. And so I would encourage you to take out a single piece of paper and just a blank sheet of paper, draw a line down the center, and on the left, write assets at the top, and on the right, write liabilities. And now just write down everything you know that you own, including your car, your house, all of those things. And if once you get them written down, look at them and organize them in terms of what, or number them as in terms of what is the most liquid. So the most liquid thing you own is probably the cash and change in your wallet. That's the most readily accessible and usable to you. But then comes your checkbook, maybe your savings account, because it's very easy to transfer from savings to checking, and those kinds of things. You may have, an investment account that you could sell something, some of your investments and get at readily. And probably the least liquid asset that you have is real property. So it would be your home or a second home that you may have, or just even land that you might own. But that's probably the least liquid because it takes the most time to turn that over to somebody else and turn it into cash. And then on the liabilities side of the ledger, write down everything you owe, starting from, just credit cards, the things that are monthly kinds of debts. Or if you have education debt from, college debt, if you have personal loans, or, finally your mortgage. And that should be from the shortest period of time that you'll pay it off to the longest. And so again, your house mortgage is probably going to be at the bottom of that list because those are often 30 years responsibilities. And once you look at that sheet, then, I would encourage you to sit down and look at both sides, and you'll be able to start looking at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So when you look at it, if you don't have, for instance, very much readily accessible cash, that would be a threat. That would be a threat because if something bad happens, it may take you longer to deal with that because you don't have the cash available. But you can also look and see if you have a lot of cash there and it's simply sitting in a checking account or maybe just a savings account, then that money isn't working for you. And that's a huge opportunity to look to invest it in more and better utilize those dollars. And so once you have that balance sheet, the next thing you need to do is look at and create a cash flow statement. And the cash flow is real simple. It's just to pull out another piece of paper and again, draw a line down the center. And on the left, write down everything that you receive for income. Whether that's your job, it might be royalties off of, some oil well you own. Especially here in Colorado, I find a lot of clients may have this little oil well and it pays $200 a year, but it's income. And so it's all of the income kinds of things, Social Security, pensions, what have you. And write down all of your income. And then on the right side, write down all of your expenses. And start with the things that you absolutely have to pay, that being your mortgage, the utilities, the kinds of things that are recurring every month. And you have to pay those in order to continue to live as you currently are. And then when you get down towards the bottom, it's the things that are more discretionary, the clothes budget, the maybe, the vacation money, the going out to dinner money, that type of thing. And take a look at that and realize that, you'll be able to start identifying where your income goes, first of all. And secondly, you can start looking at those numbers. And if you were thinking of doing something like refinancing your house, that will give you the information that those mortgage lenders are going to ask for, because they're looking for things like that your housing cost compared to your gross pay is about 28% or less. And so when you look at just the principal and interest payment compared to what you earn in a month, that's the number you want to target for and be less than. Likewise, your total debts, including, that house payment, but also any student loans or vehicle loans or leases. Then if you look at your total debt, those payments should be less than 36% or less than your total income. And so that gives you a good benchmark to see how am I doing relative to debt. And the other thing that gives you is it starts to show what you have in terms of the difference in those, in terms of discretionary cash flow. Because hopefully the column on the left totals up to a bigger number than the column on the right, meaning that you have more income than you have expenses. And that will help you identify how much discretionary cash flow you have that's not committed to something. And by the way, one of the things you should be putting on the right side is regular savings. So the money that you're putting into a 401k or the money you're saving on a monthly basis, that should be listed as one of those top numbers up there with your utilities and your house payment of how much you are saving, because that's an important aspect of your ability to move forward going in the future. And so now that we have done our statements, we have our statements, and we're ready to be the boss. So I've got my balance sheet, I've got my cash flow statement, and I'm ready to take charge, Stacey. Now what?
All right. Well, I love that, Marla. So we, in essence, are the CFO of our own, financial company here. We're the chief investment officer, and you just walked us through how we take inventory to understand what we have, and then how to understand our income expenses. So what's next? Well, as CFO, we get to be strategic, right? And I love this. This quote that the Little Prince learns that, a goal without a plan is just a wish. Or as I like to say, if you don't have a plan, someone else will be glad to give you theirs. So it's very important to think about what you want. What are your goals? And you may think, well, I've got lots of goals, but they're around family and they're around other things. It's not all financial. And I encourage you to think about it really holistically, because even non-financial goals often have a financial component. So, let's really look at how creating this financial foundation will help support us obtaining the other goals that we want in our life. How can we put the money that we have and the resources that we've accumulated over our lives to work for us, so that those investments and money is in alignment with reaching the goals that we really want to accomplish in our lives. So I encourage you to think big, right? Think about, things. What are we excited about? What energizes us? And some ideas might be, travel, retirement, saving money for our kids' college, leaving a legacy. What are our giving goals? Do we want to maybe start a new business, make a big gift, plan a big celebration, or something else? A lot of folks are really dreaming about travel right now, because we've been, cocooned during the pandemic. We're ready to go back out in the world. So, what are some things that are exciting, that energize us? And those are the big ideas that will help propel us into the future that we want, help us take steps to mitigate the risks that we have, so that we can get to the goals that we want to achieve. So, Marla, I'll let you talk about the risks.
So, life is risky. Life is a risky business, no matter how you look at it. Because part of it is because life happens, and there are things that are outside of our control that we then have to deal with it. They become part of our life. And whatever that is that happens to us, it's very important to recognize that really the only thing that we can be certain of is that things will change. wherever we are right now, it will not be exactly the same next week, next month, next year, and next decade. And so knowing that, one important value money provides is the ability to help us handle our fears and the things that keep us up at night. And so, I'd ask you to look at what are your specific fears? What kinds of things are most concerning to you? So, is it just running out of money? I mean, that's a top concern with a lot of people. It could, is it the cost of healthcare and long-term healthcare and what that might mean? Or is it, suffering investment losses that, that you don't open your investment statements because you don't want to see what it says? And, or, is it just worrying about when you retire of not having that paycheck that's coming in every month on a regular basis and switching to something that you have maybe less control over and of how you fund your life? So, a good financial plan can help kind of mitigate these risks. We can start to sit down and say, all right, with my balance sheet and with my cash flow statement, and now I've identified my goals and the things that excite me and what I want to accomplish that Stacey was talking about. And I've identified what are the things I'm afraid of and what am I worried about. And now I can sit down and say, all right, how can a plan come up with some what if this happens and what if that happens? And both on the positive and the negative, and try and give you a path that you can stay inside the guardrails, if you will. A good financial plan can really help mitigate those risks that you've looked at and start giving you a way to stay on path and have the guardrails to keep you out of trouble. And so let's look at what the 5 best tips we have for building resiliency as you're building that plan. And, absolutely the first thing is you got to start. You got to start right now. And even with the small, it's the whole thing that, of the journey starts with a single step, and taking that first step, getting just out of the box, making a commitment to yourself that you're going to get involved with your money. And start with your balance sheet and your cash flow statement. And then secondly, ask questions. What I think you'll find is whether it's just asking, the individuals that are in your household and to get talking about money and get used to talking about money. But I would highly encourage you to ask experts, ask people that are expert in your field. Just like with, if something's bothering your elbow, your tendency is to start looking up information on elbows and probably not going to ask your neighbor unless he had elbow surgery. But you can go, and talk to a doctor, talk to a nurse, talk to somebody about that. And so I would encourage you on whatever it is, taxes, investments, what have you, talk to somebody that has some knowledge and credentials in the field. And then envision your goals. Start thinking about those goals that when you were looking at what energizes you with Stacey had mentioned, and find a picture just in a magazine or anywhere, or maybe it's old photograph you had or a picture on your phone. Print that out and put it somewhere where you will see it every day. That picture reminds you of that goal. And you might just, put a sticky on your computer screen so that when you come in every day and start working on your computer, it's right there looking at you to say, that's my goal. I got to remember that. And so all of the things I'm going to do today are going to at least, not take me off track for trying to achieve that goal. And then lean into the long term. One of the important things about how we approach financial planning is to look long term, and that having that picture of the goal helps, but also don't let the gyrations of, for instance, of the stock market or anything derail you on your investments, and don't let salacious news distract you. That because news is designed to get attention, and is very often effective, but it's not the end of the world kind of thing, and make sure you put that in context and don't let those types of things really derail you. And then build a team. I mentioned asking experts. Look for a team. Look for a team of people that will help you with your plan. And that could be an estate attorney. It could be a CPA or your tax person, a financial planner, and an insurance person. Those types of people, because a team will help you much better get to where you're going without and not feeling that you're running this alone. This is not a solo event, if you will. And so let's look at trying to balance things as you're going forward. What's important, and I love this quote of balance occurs when one simply has money without emotional conflict. And that when it uses it to pursue one's values, life's goals, and meaning. And that's what it should be. It should be a tool. It should be a tool and not an emotional burden to you of what to do with it and how to manage it and that type of thing. Because, as I said, the team can help you with that. And if you find yourself, looking like one of those cartoons that Stacey showed in the beginning, and where you're kind of overwhelmed with life and work and maintaining relationships, and I need to exercise too, and I haven't been tending to my spiritual needs, and I've got these phone calls to return and these text messages and emails, and suffice it to say that one of the greatest challenges is not necessarily just getting things done. It's finding the time to not only get the important things done, but also have time for leisure, to have time to support ourselves, to nurture us, because we will be better, much better at accomplishing all of those other things if we work on our own personal health and our own both spiritual, mental, and physical. Not, and those three are somewhat inseparable. And so, do enough to develop a good understanding of, kind of where you are, where you want to go, and then find a balance that make it possible for you to, if you will, enjoy the trip getting there, because that's as important as arriving at the destination. If you took a trip across the country in a car, it's going to be very important, not just that you arrive where you're going, but that hours and hours along the road are actually enjoyable, and that'll make all the difference. So, Stacey, what kinds of things can we do to make this more real?
Okay, so there's a great African proverb that I love. And basically the proverb says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And that's really where I encourage all of you listening today to find a support circle. Find a way to get support in this, that you're not in it alone. There are many, many people, professionals, financial advisors, friends who can help you. And we are here to support you on this journey. As Marla talked, balance is really important, and resilience. It's not just about getting through things. It's also about building in ways to recharge so that we have the courage and the strength to move forward when it's really important. So take this time to find a support circle for helping you achieve the goals that you've set. Explore your relationship with money and create an accountability circle, to help you meet those goals, because the future you will be thanking the current you for doing that planning for your future. And on behalf of me and Marla, we are here to support you on your journey, and you can contact us at any time with questions, thoughts, ideas for future topics. Learn more at assetsandincome.com and call us anytime at 303-690-5070. Have a great day. Be well.